Hi and welcome to today's video tutorial. Before we get started, I will go over the different tools and resources we will be using for this website. The links to these resources can be found in the description area below. The first resource is obviously Webflow.com. We will be using Webflow today to build this website. To me, it is the best visual web development platform on the web. If you are new to Webflow, I highly recommend the Webflow University. They cover everything about the program. In this video tutorial, I will be moving a bit quick through all the topics, so if you are new to Webflow, I highly recommend going to the Webflow University and checking out those videos first. The next resource I will go over is the Learn UI Design course by Erik Kennedy. If you are new to web development or design, I highly recommend taking this course. It lays the foundation for designing beautiful user interfaces. So along with this course and Webflow, you will be building beautiful websites in no time. The next resource I will go over is Envato Elements. It is an amazing place to download really beautiful assets. They do have a monthly subscription and a yearly subscription. The images and background we will be using today are from Envato Elements. The last resource I will go over is WebDevForYou.com. This is where I provide daily interactions that are built in Webflow every weekday. You can clone the daily interactions into your own projects for free. I also have premium content, templates, and links to other Webflow resources on my site. Again, all the links for these resources can be found in the description area below. Hey, what's up everyone? This is John with WebDev for You, and today we are going to be rebuilding this website in Webflow. So if you saw the intro, you've noticed the different aspects of this website. It's more of like a header, but it could make for an entire website. There's enough functionality here in this first section that you could just have this as a website, as like a full viewport website on a desktop. Then for tablet, mobile landscape, and mobile portrait, you can kind of rearrange these elements to fit those devices. But today we're just going to focus on the desktop version of the site, where we have the content on the left, we have the slider, we have the video here, the light box, and we have this kind of design element here on the right, and we have the menu here at the top. We're not going to create this effect here. That was actually created in After Effects, and I will do a part 2 to this video where I create that animated logo and place it into Webflow using body moving and Lottie. So this logo here at the beginning was After Effects. It's fairly simple, but I'll showcase how to save it out and place it into Webflow. But yeah, basically it's just a pretty simple website. The fun thing about this website is that the text changes. There's an animation to the text. So as I go left and right with the slider, the text kind of has this animation to it where it appears from the bottom to the top, and then the paragraph changes as well. There's a few hover effects, and there's a nice background to it. So yeah, the assets were from Envato Elements, and we are going to build this website in Webflow. So without further ado, let's get started building it in Webflow. All right, so I am going to move a bit quick through this tutorial, and let me just zoom in here into the interface, just so we can see everything a bit better. Here I have the website in Webflow. I can just showcase it really quick. It looks like this. Text is layered on top of each other, so it does look a bit, doesn't look great here, but if you preview, you notice the text is not like that. So let's jump right in. All right, so I'm not going to cover every little detail that I go over. I'm not going to say this is more of an advanced class, but it's just a class for you to see my process, how I work with Webflow, and hopefully you can get some tips and tricks, and yeah, and just see how I build it. So the first thing we start off with is the body. So in the body, I'm just going to place a section. So I'm going to use the shortcut key, Command K, to add elements into Webflow. So I'm going to add a section, I'll hit enter, and now we have that section. I'm going to use lowercase letters for the class names. So here we have section, and for this section, I'm going to set the height to 100 VH. You could set the minimum height to 100 VH as well, but I know I don't want any scrolling to the site, so I'm just setting the height to 100 VH. So again, it is going to be a header that's 100% width or 100 viewport width, and the height is 100 viewport height. All right, so for this section, we're actually going to use grid. So if you haven't messed with CSS Grid yet, I highly recommend it. It's a super cool way to build out layouts in Webflow. So to make the section, the display setting to grid, we're just going to click on the grid option here. Grid lets you place items within rows and columns. So I'm going to click it, and now we can set up the grid. So we can set up how many columns we want and how many rows. So I know for this website, I just want 3 columns, right? The left column, the slider column, and then the social media column. So if we look at the site, we have this here, we have this, and this. Okay, so we want 3 columns, so I'm just going to click the plus here to add another column, and I'm going to delete the second row. So we have 3 columns there. I don't want any gap, so I'm just going to set 0 for the gap, and perfect. So we're working with the fraction unit, which is a really nice way to be able to create grids in Webflow. So I'm just going to go ahead and visually see how large or small I want to make each column. So the last column, I want it to be really small, so I'll set it to 0.25. Then the second column, I'm going to make it a bit smaller as well, so something like 0.5. And then the third column, I can even make it a bit bigger, maybe 1.25. And again, I'm going to reference this site because just to see the different things. So 1.75, 1.25, and 0.25. Because I already built it, so I can just reference it really quick. 1.25, and I think I got it exactly, 1.75, 1.25. So yeah, it just depends. You can just work with it. So I'm gonna say 1.25 and then 1.75 here. All right, so there we go. We've got a nice grid layout for the section. So I'll go ahead and add div blocks inside of each section. So within section 1, I'm gonna go ahead and hit Command K. I'm gonna type in div for div block, and it already places it in there. So this left navigator, this is a bit new in Webflow at the time of this recording, where you can now pin the navigator to the left. So that is just super important and super amazing that Webflow added this, because as I'm working on the site, you can see the structure of the elements as I'm building it. All right, so we have this div block. I'm gonna call it left wrapper. So all the contents of here are gonna go inside of the left wrapper. Then for the second column, I'll go ahead and hit Command K. I'll add a div block, and let me place it here in the second column. So I'm just click holding and dragging into this grid section, and I'll call it, and actually, let me redo that. I'll just delete that. We actually want to add a slider in here. So I'm gonna hit Command K, type in slider, and select it, and then I'll just click, hold, and drag and place in there. And now we have the slider here. So I'll rename it to slider. And for the height, I'll set it to 100%. So it fills the entire grid cell there, the grid section. And then the last div section or grid section is this right part here. So again, I'll click on section, hit Command K, I'll add a div block, I'll click, hold, and drag and place that div block right in there. And I'll call this right wrapper. Okay, so we have the left wrapper, we have the slider, and we have the right wrapper. Okay, so let's go ahead and start filling in the content. So I'll go ahead and start adding, first I'll add the menu, and then I'll add the content here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll add another div block inside of the left wrapper. So I'll say div, and I'll call this menu wrapper. So this is where the menu will go. And we'll just leave it like that for now. Or actually, I want a specific height to this menu wrapper, so I'm going to set it to 100 pixels in height. So I know it fits, it just fits nicely in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some text and some link blocks or text links. So for this, the way I want this to work, I'll go ahead and add a text block, or I can hit Command K, add a text block, select it there, and I'll just call this the logo text, or the text logo. Okay, so the name of this website is Conserve, so it's an animal conservation kind of website. So I'm going to just type in CONSRV, and I'll go ahead and style it within text. So for this text, I'm using Proxima Nova from Adobe Fonts. And if you do have Creative Cloud, you have access to Adobe Fonts. So I'll leave a link on how to link Adobe Fonts into Webflow. But I went through the whole process of linking my Adobe Fonts to Webflow, and then I added Proxima Nova to this project. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. The font size, or the font weight is black, and then I think the font size, let's see here, the font size is 18 and the line height is 20. Okay, let me go back in here. The font size is 18, line height 20. So for this menu wrapper, I want everything to be in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and change the display setting to flex. So flex lays out its child elements on a horizontal and vertical axis. So I'll go ahead and click there. I want to align it in the center, so it just gets centered. And I'm also going to, or actually we can justify it to the left for now, so that's fine. So we have the text Conserve. The next thing I want to do is add that line. So if we look at the website, we have this line here. So I'm just going to go ahead, hit Command K, add a div block, and I'm going to call this menu line. Okay, I'm going to give it a height of 1 pixel, and I'm going to say the sizing here, because it is Flexbox, you can grow different elements inside of a Flexbox wrapper. So I'm going to say grow if possible. So it just tries to fill the entire wrapper, the entire Flexbox wrapper. And then for the background, I'm going to go ahead and set the background to black, right? So now we have this line, it's right in there, perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a few text links for the menu items. So here I'll hit Command K, type in text link, and it just places it right there, perfect. For this, I'm just going to say blog, and then I'll hit Command C and Command V to paste. So we have those two there. So I'll say blog and contact. All right. So obviously the spacing is a bit tight, so let's go ahead and fix that. So I'll select the menu line, and I'll go ahead and add some left and right margin. So I'll hold down Alt. That's the shortcut to adjust left and right, or top and bottom, and we'll add 20 pixels of margin so there's some space between the lines. And then for the link, let's rename this. So I'll call this menu link, or I could call it menu item link. Okay, and then for contact, we'll again call it menu item link, and perfect. So we obviously have to style that, so let's go ahead and do that really quick. So for the style, I don't want any text decoration, so there's no underline. For the color, I'll go ahead and change it to, I'll go ahead and, let's do 333, so it's not completely black. And then let's add some right margin, so maybe about 10 there for the margin. And that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and set the font to Proxima Nova, and the font weight to medium. Okay, so yeah, that's looking pretty good. Maybe we can add a bit more margin, maybe 20 to that, and looks pretty good. So there we have it. One thing you can do, because the navigator is taking up more real estate within the designer, you can just go to preview, and you'll notice everything gets a bit wider, or kind of expands because we now have more real estate. So I'll be using the preview quite often, just to get a better feel for how the site's looking. All right, so the other thing we notice here is that there's no padding or margin to the left and right of the menu wrapper. So for the padding, I'll just add some here. So I'll hold down Alt and just add, let me try that again, and just add some padding to about 40. So everything, it doesn't touch the left and right of of the site there. So just like that, we have a nice little menu. Obviously the site isn't too in-depth, it just has a blog and contact to kind of inform users about animal conservation. So that's fine. So let's go ahead and add the content now. So for that, what I'll do is add a content wrapper. So I'll select the left wrapper, hit Command K, add a div block, and I'll call this content wrapper. Okay. And what I'll do for the left wrapper is I'll set the display setting to flex, set it to vertical stretch, and justify start. So, oh yeah, set it to vertical, align stretch, and justify start. Okay, so what this does is it places the menu on top and it places the content wrapper below it. So I'll select the content wrapper, and again for the sizing, I'm going to say grow if possible, so it fills the entire available space within the left wrapper. Alright, so now we have this content wrapper, and this is where we're going to put the heading, the subheading, and the paragraph. Okay, so let's go in here, and for this I'm going to set the display setting of the content wrapper to horizontal, justify center, and align center. So everything is placed nicely within the center of this content wrapper. Alright, so I'll go ahead and add an H1 text. So select the content wrapper, hit Command K, say H1 or heading. I'll say H1, and I'll go ahead and say, let's see what I have here for the site. The first one is making the connection. So I'll say making the connection. Okay, and yeah, that looks good. Let's go ahead and style the text. I'll say Proxima Nova right here, and I think it's Proxima Nova black, so it's like really bold. Let's go ahead and see, or it's bold, size 60, line height 70. All right, so it's bold here, and 60 and 70 there. And let's hit enter here so that it doesn't kind of spill into the next, or actually what we can do, oh, that's better. Okay, let me do that again. Okay, all right, so we have making the connection. So hopefully as you're watching this, you know, if you work with Adobe XD or Sketch, you'll start to see the similarities between the interfaces or the different options. So you see me working with text. The only thing different is the web development concepts that I'm using, right? Like placing things in wrappers, the sizing, flexbox and grid. These are all web development concepts that help you translate a Sketch or XD prototype into Webflow. So yeah, I think just, you know, Webflow is just a super powerful tool to be able to just convert from those platforms into an actual website. All right, so let me just rename the class name here, H1 heading, and yeah, it looks good, making the connection. So one thing that I like to do with content is I like to have a lot of white space, right? So like if I preview this here, we notice that it goes across the entire content wrapper here on the left. I actually want like 20% white space on the left and the right of my content. So for the content wrapper, I'm going to go to padding, and I'm going to say 20% from the left and 20% from the right. Okay, so now if I preview, we have some nice white space here within the left wrapper. Okay, so so far so good. It's looking pretty good. So we have the H1 heading, and there's a step I missed, so let me go ahead and backtrack a bit. Before we add the H1 heading, we want to place the H1 heading in a wrapper. So let me select the content wrapper, hit Command K. I'll type in div, so I'll add a div block, and I'm gonna call this heading wrapper. Okay, and I'm gonna place the H1 heading inside of this heading wrapper. Okay, so it looks the same, but there is a wrapper around it now. And what this allows me to do, and also let me remove the margin from the bottom and the top here. What having the heading wrapper allows me to do is, with the heading wrapper selected, I can now go into overflow and set it to hidden. So if you notice in the site here, when I go to the next slides, the text is appearing, but it's almost like a masking effect, right? So because they're in a wrapper, and I'm kind of losing my voice here, but because they're in a wrapper, I'm setting the wrapper to an overflow of hidden, and then the content appears out of the wrapper, and this will make sense in a second. So one thing I noticed that I didn't do, let me delete this here. So we actually have two headings inside of here, and let me just double check that. So we have heading, okay, yeah, so gotcha. So we have two text blocks. So if you notice, this text appears and then this text appears as well. So if you notice, we have two headings appearing out of an overflow hidden wrapper. Okay, so we have making the connection. Let's see, yeah, so heading, okay, gotcha. So what I'll do is I'll copy and paste the heading wrapper, and let's see if I did that right. So heading, okay, gotcha. All right, cool. So I'm just referencing it because there's quite a few moving pieces to this. So for the content wrapper, we're going to set it to a display setting of vertical so that things stack on top of each other. Okay, so now here for the next heading, I'll say making the connection. Okay, and then for the heading wrapper, let's see here, heading wrapper and the heading. So, okay, and let's do for the content wrapper, align left, not center, so that these are aligned here, the making the connection here. Okay, so now we have this heading and this heading. Okay, all right, so that looks pretty good, and I also want to name this slide 1 heading. Okay, for both of these, this will help me as I'm building the slides to know which one I'm working with. All right, so hopefully you're following along. If you have any questions, let me know. But yeah, I'll keep it moving. Okay, so we have the heading wrapper, and yeah, now we want to add the subheading. Okay, so the subheading is also going to go in a wrapper. So I'll select the content wrapper, hit Command K, add a div block, and I'll call this subheading wrapper. I'll set the overflow to hidden, and then in here I'll add a heading, and I'll set it to an H2 heading, so it'll be a subheading. And let's see what I have for the text here. So we have one animal at a time. So let me just type that really quick. One animal at a time. And let's check out the font. So it's 16, font size 16, line height 20, and it's bold. Okay, so I'll say Proxima Nova, size 16, line height 20. Okay, and then the letter spacing is quite large here, so letter spacing is 6. So we'll go ahead and say 6 here for the letter spacing. And just like that, looks good. And just to make sure, we'll go ahead and say all caps here for the style to capitalize it. All right, looks good. Yeah, so let me rename this here, and I'll say slide 1 subheading. And I'll go ahead and remove or for the margin, I'll say 40, and for the margin bottom, I'll say 40 as well. I think that's what I did here. So, or maybe not. So let's see, H1 wrapper, paragraph. Okay, so, oh yeah, H2 wrapper. Okay, 2020, all right. So let's go in here and we'll set this to 0 for the margin. And the subheading wrapper, we'll set it to 20 and 20. Okay, so I'm just working with the spacing here to add a bit more spacing there. All right, so now the last thing we'll do is add the paragraph. So I'll hit Command K and add a paragraph. Okay, that looks good. We'll just leave the lorem ipsum for now. And then for the font, I'm going to say Proxima Nova. And again, I'll reference this here. So we say 16 with line height of 26. We'll say 16, line height 26. That looks good. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and preview. So we notice this text is a bit too long. I don't want it to really go past the heading here. So I'll just select the paragraph, and I'll call this slide 1 paragraph here for this paragraph. And I'll set the width here to 400 pixels. Okay, so that this paragraph doesn't extend beyond the heading here. All right, so we're almost there with the text. So let's go ahead and add the button. So I'll select the content wrapper, hit Command K, add a button, and we just have a button there. And I'll just say learn more. All right, and that looks pretty good. Let me remove the border radius. Okay, it doesn't have one. And I'll go ahead and grab the color we're using for this site. So it's a lime green, lime green. So I'll select it and just paste it right in there. Okay, so we have that green. And we'll style this button a bit more. Let me go ahead and change the text to Proxima Nova, and we'll say bold. Okay, add a bit of letter spacing and maybe make it 18, a bit larger there. Okay, maybe 1 for the letter spacing. Okay, so we have making the connection, and we'll go ahead and add some margin to the top of this button so it's not so close, and bam. So we have the content. We will have to duplicate this because we're going to have 3 slides, but first I'm going to create the first slide, and then we'll add the other slides. Okay, so let's go ahead and and a few things I'll mention. So if you notice, I'm working a lot with alignment. All these things you'll learn in the Learn UI design course about alignment and placement of elements and working with typography. So if you want to know more about the design aspect of what I'm doing, definitely check out the Learn UI design course. All right, so we have the content. Let's go ahead and add an image to slide 1. So we have slide 1. I'll go ahead and rename it slide-1. And to add a background image, I'll go to the backgrounds, click the plus, choose an image, and I'll choose the first image here of the elephant with the sky, and I'll hit say cover, so it covers the entire slide there, and I'll just position it in the center, and I don't need it to be tiled. Okay, so now when I preview, we have that image there. Perfect, looks good. So let's go ahead and add the content here, and then we'll animate all these elements. So here we have the right wrapper. So in this wrapper, we have a few little design elements. So we have this block here, we have this line, and a few social media icons. So I'll go ahead and hit Command K, and I'll add a div block. For this div block, I'll make it 75 pixels by 75, or maybe 50 by 50. Okay, and then for the color, select the background color, and yeah, I'll select this green here. I actually saved it to the global swatches so I can access it, and yeah, and then for the right wrapper, let's give it a display setting of flex, and we'll say vertical. We'll center everything, and we'll start at the top. Okay, so now that block is there, and that block can be a bit smaller, maybe 35 pixels by 35. So this is where it's kind of good to reference the preview, because if you notice, everything gets a little bit condensed here as I'm working with it in the designer, but when I preview, I can see a good representation of what the site is looking like. Okay, so the next thing I'll add in the right wrapper, I'll hit Command K, add a div block, and I'll add a line. So I'll say for the width 1 pixel, for the sizing I'll say grow if possible, so it fills the available space, and for the background I'll say black. Okay, so we have that little decoration there of that line, and for the line let me add some bottom and top margin. So I'll hold down Alt, and I'll say like 20 pixels of bottom and top margin. The next thing I want to add is the social media wrapper. So I'll select the right wrapper, and I'll say div, add a div block, call this social media wrapper, and in this wrapper I'm going to add a link block so we can add some social media icons, and I'll call this social media link block. I like using link blocks for social media because it allows for more mouse space. Like if you just add a text link, then the user has to hover exactly over the icon, but by placing the icon in a link block, it gives more mouse area for the user to click. Okay, so we have the link block, and inside the link block, I'm gonna hit Command K and add a text block. Okay, so we'll add a text block, and I'll go ahead and go to fontawesome.com, and we'll go ahead and grab a few social media icons, okay? So let me say Twitter. So we'll go to Twitter. Here, copy this, and I'll hit click to copy, to copy the glyph. And let's go back in here, and I'll just paste that in there, okay? So right now it's just a square, and let me rename the class to social media icon. Right now it's just a square, so we actually have to go into the font and select FA brand. So it's Font Awesome Brands. And I'll leave a link to a Webflow article on how to install Font Awesome into Webflow. It's pretty easy. You just download the font set from Font Awesome and then install it into Webflow. All right, so we have the social media there, and let me style the social media link block. So I'll select it here or in the navigator. I'll say none, and then for the color, I'll say 333. Okay. I might change everything to black. I don't usually like working with complete black because it's pretty dense on the site. So like I'm just using a black with a bit more brightness to it. So like it has 20% brightness, so it doesn't look so dense. Especially on Retina screens, a black looks really dense. So I'm just making it a bit lighter here. That's not the case with the first one I did. I actually used black. But for this one, I'm just going to use a lighter variation of it. All right, so we have the Twitter icon. That size looks okay, 14 pixels, line height of 20. So let me go ahead and just copy the social media link block. I can select it down here or in the navigator. So I'll hit Command C to copy, and then I'll paste it 3 times. I'll select the social media wrapper, change the display setting to flex, set it to vertical, and perfect. So we have it there, and I'll just add maybe some margin, like 10 pixels. So there's some spacing between, and let me add it to the link block, not the social media icon. So there we go. So we have 10 pixels of spacing. That looks good. And I'll just go to Font Awesome. So we have Twitter. Let's do Facebook. Let's do this one here. I'll copy the Unicode glyph, and let's go back in here, and I'll paste it in there. And let's do one more. Let's do YouTube. So we'll copy this YouTube here, copy the Unicode glyph, and I'll paste that right in there. Okay. So for the social media link blocks, let's set a display setting of flex, and let's just center everything. So align center and justify center. All right, so now if I preview, we have the social media icons there. So again, I want to add some padding to the bottom and top here of the right wrapper. So I'll just go select the right wrapper, and let's add some padding. So let's do like 40 maybe. So 40, and that looks pretty good. The thing I'm looking for is a nice alignment between the menu here and this block here. The block maybe could be moved up a bit, but we'll get to that in a second. And maybe not 40 for the bottom, maybe 20 pixels for the bottom. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's see, and this line here should be 1 pixel, and this line 1 pixel. Okay, 1 pixel. All right, yeah, it's looking pretty good. We have the social media icons. We have kind of this little decoration here. So the other thing we notice is we have kind of this topographic background. It just adds a bit more style to the site. So let's go ahead and add that really quick. So the way that I did that is I selected the body, and I just added another div block in the body, so I'm going to say, hit Command K. Let me select the body, hit Command K, and I'll add another div block, and I'll call this topographic background. And let's set the position for this div block to absolute and full, right? So by setting it to a position of absolute, or we could actually do fixed, so it stays fixed within the browser, right? Because this website is just filling the browser. So I'll set it to fixed, and for the background, I'll add a background. I'll choose an image, and I have this topographic background here. Again, I got this from Envato Elements. I'll set it to cover, so it covers that space, and center it. So we just have it centered, and I don't need it to be tiled, and perfect. So as you can see, that background is really really dark, and it's conflicting with all the content on the site. So we just want to set the opacity. So right now I'll just go down to opacity and set the opacity to something like 5 or 10%. So let's try 10%. 10% is pretty good. It's still kind of distracting. I just want it to be barely visible. So I'll set it to like 5%. And at 5%, I'm okay with that. Like, the user can see it, and it just adds a bit of style to, and a bit more feel to the site. Like, it's just a bit more style to it. Yeah, so far it's looking good. Now that we have our elements, the last thing I want to do is I want to style these icons here, or the left and right slider. So we have these arrows here. I want to place these arrows here at the bottom. So if we look at the preview, we have these arrows here at the bottom. So I'll go ahead and select the left arrow. I can select it in the navigator here. So we have the slider, and then we have the left arrow and the right arrow. I'll select the left arrow, and I'm going to give it a specific width and height, right? So I'm going to say 100 pixels by 100 pixels. Okay. I'm going to set the background to black, and I'm going to set the position to absolute for the left arrow, and place it in the bottom left. So it goes in the bottom left. And then for the margin, I'm going to say negative 100 pixels. So it moves 100 pixels to the left, right? And it'll place it nice and flush with the left side of the slider. So for the right arrow, I'll select the right arrow. Again, I'll set it to 100 pixels by 100 pixels. Set the background to black, and I'll position it in the lower left as well. And just like that, we have those two arrows at the bottom. Pretty simple. So now if I click, I can go through the different slides just like that. All right, so yeah, so far so good. I think we have a lot of the components that we need for the site. So let's go ahead and create the animation. So what I want to occur is that when the slide comes in, I want the slide text to appear, and when the slide goes out, I want the slide text to go down. So let's go ahead and quickly animate everything. Okay, and let me change the position of the background. If you can't select elements, it's because let's go back in here. Okay, yeah, I want the slider there. Okay, so we want the body. Let me place the topographic background behind the section so I can select the elements, which I still can't do. So let me set the topographic background, the Z indexed to 0. And the section, let me set the Z index to 1. So where is it here? The position, let me set it to relative. All right, perfect. So I just needed to change the positioning of the section so that it comes to the front. So I set it to relative, and now in the designer, I can select the elements. All right, cool. So when working with a slider, let me just open it here. When working with the slider, you do have the option to animate elements as the slider comes in and out. So in interactions, let me select slide 1, and I'll go to interactions. I'll select the element trigger, and then we have this option here that says slider change. So I'll go ahead and select that. So when the slider is in view, I want the heading text and the subheading text to appear, and I want the paragraph to fade in. So when the slider is in view, I'm going to start an animation. I'm going to click the plus, and I'm going to say D dash or slide one in. So slide one in, okay? So when it comes in, we'll animate everything. So I'll select the slide one heading. I'll say move, and I'm going to move it down on the y-axis 100%, right? So we don't see it. And because the heading wrapper has an overflow of hidden, we don't see it outside of that wrapper. And then for the timing, I'm going to set it as the initial state, and perfect. And I'll do the same thing for the slide one subheading. So I'll say move it down 100%, and I'll set it as the initial state. Perfect. And then for the paragraph, I'll set the opacity to 0%, and I'll set it as the initial state. So if I preview, we don't see anything. So those are the initial states. So now I want those states to reappear. So I'll select the slide one heading, I'll say move, and I'll move it back to 0% on the y-axis. Let's set the easing to ease out quad, the duration of 0.35, and we'll add a delay of 0.35. So the reason I'm adding a delay is because it'll give it some time, it'll give the previous slide some time to animate out, and then this one will animate in. So this will make a bit more sense in a second. Okay, then I'll select the slide one subheading. I'll say move it on the Y to 0%, and I'll just place it right there. So slide one subheading, set the easing to ease out quad, and a duration of 0.35, okay? Then for the paragraph, we'll set the opacity to 100%, say ease out quad, duration of 3.5, click, hold, and drag to start it with the other elements. So now when I preview, these elements come in just like that. All right, so that's all we had to do for this animation. So let me close this here. And then when the slider is out of view, I'm going to start an animation, and I'll duplicate slide one in. So I'll say duplicate, click it here, and then I'll say slide one out. All right, so here we have it. I'm just gonna use the initial state, so I can select these states here, and then I'll just select the initial state, and I'll uncheck set as initial state. And now everything will go back to the initial state, and I'll set the timing to 0.35 here, and I'll say ease out quad. If you select multiple timed actions, you can adjust the timing and easing and delay for multiple elements. So just as an example, yeah, so when we go out of the slide, the headings will move down, the subheading moves down, and the paragraph goes back to an opacity of 0%. So it comes in, then when we go out, everything disappears. All right, so we have the animation. So now let's add two more slides. So let me go into the slider, right in here, go into the slider, let me close this. And we have slide 2, so I'll rename this to slide-2. And for the background, I'll add a new background, choose an image, and we'll choose this one here, set it to cover, position it in the center, and I don't need it to be tiled. I might work with the positioning a bit just to get the position of the image really nice, but for now we'll just say center. Okay, so we have the second slide, and now we want to copy the subheadings. All right, so this is a really interesting part of the tutorial, because now we're going to add another div block within the heading wrapper. So notice what happens here, right? Because we want content that matches this image, so we're adding different content. So I'm going to select the heading wrapper. I'm going to select slide 1 heading. I'm going to hit Command-C to copy and Command-V to paste. So notice what happened there, right? The text goes below each other. I want the text to be on top of each other. So the way to do that is, first we need to set the heading wrapper to a position of relative. So for the position, I'll say relative. And then for the heading that I copied, I'm going to select it. I'm going to say duplicate class, and I'm going to call this slide 2 heading. And for the slide to heading, I'm also going to set the position to absolute and full. Okay. So the slide to heading is here at the top. So if I double click, there's actually two headings, but they have the same text. So if I double click, I'm going to type in into the, and then I'll do the same thing here for this heading. Hit Command C to copy, paste it in the heading wrapper, duplicate the class, or actually I can remove the class, and I'll say slide to heading, and just apply the slide to heading there. And I'll say into the jungle. Okay, so if I go into slide 1 heading and I set the display setting to none, let's see here. Yes, let me see here. Oh, we actually need the slide 1 heading because, and I think, yeah, let me set the position to relative there, just so we can work with the z-index. The reason that all the text disappears if we set the slide 1 heading to a display setting of none is because the slide 1 heading is setting the width and height for the wrapper there. So that is a bit kind of an advanced thing, and you'll probably learn that as you work more with Webflow. But because the slide 1 heading, because there's no width and height to the wrapper, it's inheriting the width and height from the content inside of it. And if an element is set to a position of absolute, it doesn't create that width and height. It either needs to be set to static or relative. So slide 1 is set to relative, and then we're using that width and height that it's creating to place the slide 2 heading in that width and height. But yeah, it looks a bit jumbled, but just know that we'll fix that as we add the animation. All right, so same thing with slide 1 subheading. We'll select it, hit Command C to copy, and paste it in the subheading wrapper. I'll duplicate the class and I'll say slide to subheading. Okay, and then I'll set the position to absolute and full. Okay, and again, we need to set the subheading wrapper to a position of relative so that the absolute position text is relative to the subheading wrapper and not relative to some other element. All right, that's a mouthful. I know I went over a lot. I'll be happy to kind of explain that in a bit more detail if you have any questions. Okay, so the subtext here is learning more every day. So let me just select slide 2 subheading and I'll say learning more every day. Every day. Okay. So we'll have to work with that because yeah, it doesn't span. Oh yeah, for the subheading wrapper, let's set the width to like 500 pixels. Okay, so it's a bit larger and it fits there. Okay, so into the jungle, learning more every day, perfect. And then for the paragraph, yeah, for the paragraph, I'll hit Command C, and we actually want to place this paragraph in a paragraph wrapper. So let's go ahead and do that. Select the section or the content wrapper, hit Command K, add a div block, and we'll say paragraph wrapper. Okay, I'll place this right up here and place the paragraph inside of the wrapper. Okay, looks good. Again, I'll set the position for the first paragraph to relative, hit Command C to copy, paste into the paragraph wrapper, duplicate the class, and I'll say slide to paragraph. Okay, set it to absolute, and position relative, paragraph, okay, absolute and full. And set it to relative here, okay. All right, so slide to paragraph, I'll just delete some text to make it a bit different. And bam, so now if I preview, we have the text here. Okay, so hopefully you're following along. I know it's a lot because everything is on top of each other, but it's just a matter of placing elements in the wrappers and setting the second and third content to a position of absolute and making sure the wrapper has a position of relative. Okay, cool. So we have the slide to paragraph. So now let's animate it. Let's animate all of this content. So I'll go to slide 2 here in the slider, go into the interactions. For element trigger, click the plus. I'll say slider change, when the slider is in view, I'll start an animation. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the slide one in. So I'll say duplicate, and let me just make sure I'm recording here. Okay. All right, cool. So yeah, just make sure I'm recording because this video is pretty long. So okay, so we have slide one in, so I'll click it here, and I'm going to rename it to slide 2 in. So all we have to do here is change the targets. So rather than a slide 2 heading, I'm going to right click, change target, and I'll select the slide 2 heading. Slide 1 setting, subheading, right click, change target, click on slide 2. Oh wait, no, right click, change target, click on slide 2 subheading. Here I'll right click, change target, click on slide 2 paragraph. And the same here, right click, change target, slide 2 heading, right click, change target, right click, slide 2 subheading, right click, change target, slide 2 paragraph. So just like that, we have Into the Jungle, and we have to add the slide out animation. So let me close this here. Going to start an animation. I'll duplicate the slide 2 in, click it here, and I'll say slide 2 out. Again, I'll just delete this here and select it, uncheck set as initial state, change the duration to 0.35, and say ease out quad. All right, so Into the Jungle comes in, and then it goes out, and then we have making the connection. So cool. We're creating a really nice site with some animation. It's some nice content for the user to digest, and they can click on learn more to learn more about the site. If you did want a different button for each section or each content, you could just fade out the button like we're doing the paragraph. But we'll just leave the button like that for now. And let's add the last slide, so we'll get some good practice here. Okay, so just taking a bit of a breath because yeah, it's getting pretty long here, but let's go ahead and finish it up here. Oh yeah, so let's go back into the site here, and perfect. So slide 2 heading, let me close this here, and what I'll do now is just copy the slide 2 heading, paste it in the heading wrapper, and oops, let me undo that. Slide 2 heading, I'm going to say duplicate class, and I'm going to call this slide 3 heading. And let's see, what did we do for the last slide? We said one leopard at a time. So one leopard, yeah, so we'll have to work on that, one leopard, and then we'll copy the heading here, paste it in the second heading wrapper, and remove the class and say slide 3 heading. And we'll say one leopard at a time. Okay. There. All right. So slide 3 heading. Let me just give it a bit more width, maybe 400, maybe 500. All right. Yeah. Okay. So we'll fix this in a second. Let me set it to auto. Okay. One leopard. Yeah, we'll fix that in a second. All right, so let's go into the subheading. Hit Command C to copy, paste that in there. Duplicate the class, say slide 3 subheading. And so leopard, helping endangered leopards. Okay, so let's type that in. Helping endangered leopards. Okay, cool. And then the paragraph. Hit Command C, paste, duplicate the class, and I'll say slide 3 paragraph. And I'll just delete some text here from the slide 3 paragraph. And it should be on the top there. Okay, I'll just copy and paste this to add a bit more content. Okay, looks good, one leopard. All right. Okay, so we have all the content, and let's add the animation now. So this will help us see the content a bit better because now everything's overlapping. So let's go ahead into the slider, and I'll hit Command C to copy and paste, or I can just select the slider, go into the element settings, and add a slide. Okay, so now we have slide 3. I'll double click, call it slide 3, select it. Oh, I renamed the slider. We want to rename slide 3. Okay, so I'll say slide 3. Okay, go into interactions, add a slider change interaction, slider and view, start an animation. I'll go ahead and duplicate the slide 1 again, select it, and I'll call this slide 3 in, and I'll just change the targets. Right click, change target, select the slide 3 heading, right click, change target, slide 3 heading, right click, change target, slide 3 paragraph, right click, change target, slide 3 heading, right click, change target, slide 3 subheading, right click, change target, slide 3 paragraph. Okay, so now we can see everything a bit better. So slide 3 subheading, yeah, that should, okay. All right, slide 3 heading, paragraph. Okay, let's keep it moving. Something's not working correctly, but that's the fun of web design and development. Always kind of troubleshooting things here. So we have slide 3 in, so I'll go ahead and duplicate this class, and I'll select it, and I'll call it slide 3 out. I'll delete all of this, change the initial state, so it's not the initial state, duration 0.35, and the easing to ease out quad. Okay, and let's take a look. So not sure why that's still there. And all right, so this is some good troubleshooting practice. So slide 3 heading, let's see, slide heading wrapper, slide 3 subheading. Let's go into the interaction here. Oh, I got it. Okay, so this is slide 3 out. It should be slide 3 in. So kind of messed that up there. Yeah, so for the animation in, it should be slider in view, slide 3 in, and then slide 3 out. I accidentally selected it there, and it's still not working. So let's see what we're doing. Slide 3 in. Oh, here I selected heading instead of subheading, so change target and select subheading. Okay, that should do it. Perfect. Okay, so we just have to make sure we're selecting the correct things. So now for the slide 3 heading here at the top, yeah, for the slide 3 heading, and let me close this here. It's not fully going across, so let me set the heading wrapper to a width of 400 pixels, maybe 500. Yeah, okay. All right, 500. Okay, cool. Wow, that's really interesting. Let me go back in here. Slide 3 in. Slide 3 subheading paragraph. Okay. Okay, let me go ahead and preview because I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. So let's preview. And let's zoom in here. Okay, 175. Okay, so click. Looks good, and yeah, so we're missing something. So let me go back into slide 3, select slide 3 out. Yes, the same thing, change target and change it to subheading 3. Okay, subheading here. Okay, now everything should work fine. So there we go, one animal at a time, and perfect. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is add the image to slide 3. So let's go into slide 3, go down into the image background, choose image, and I'll select this leopard here. Set it to cover, position it in the center, and I don't need it to be tiled. All right, yeah, so that's pretty much it. We're almost done with this website here, and it looks good. And the last thing we'll do here is we'll remove the slider nav. So I'll select it here at the bottom. For the display setting, I'll say none. And let me let me close the navigator here. So I just closed it so we have a bit more real estate here within the designer. Yeah, the last thing I want to do is, let's see, yeah, add the lightbox here for the video. Okay, so let's do that really quick. I'll go ahead and select the slider. So let me open the navigator again. I'll select the slider and hit Command K. I'll add a lightbox. Click lightbox, and let's set the slider to a position. Oh, it's already set to a position of relative. So we want the lightbox to be in the slider, and so let me see if it's in the slider. Yes, okay, so I'll place it at the top. I'll set the width and height to 200 pixels by 200 pixels, and here, let me try something here. For the heading, let me change the heading wrapper to a width of auto for now. Nope, that's not doing it. Select the slider. Okay, I'm just trying to get some more view of the slider. Let me set it to, no, that's not working. Okay. All right, so let's keep it moving. I'm just trying to get some more real estate here within Webflow, but let's keep it moving here. I'm gonna set the position to absolute for the lightbox link and place it in the lower right. And yeah, I'll go ahead and delete the image. I don't need that image. I'm gonna add a background, choose the image, and I'll choose this lion here. Set it to cover, position it in the center, and I don't need it to be tiled. So the position, let's see, slider should be in the front. Let me try bringing it to the bottom here. No. Let's see here. How's this looking? I'm gonna set it to relative. Okay, it's set there. Position absolute. Okay. We should see it. So let me set the Z index here to something like 99. Okay. All right, so there we go. And I'll change the width, the height to 100. So the width is 200 pixels, and then I'll add some bottom margin of 20 and some right margin of 20. All right, so that looks pretty good. And let me set it to the width to 150, so it's not so large. Yeah, I'm trying to get that left wrapper a bit smaller so we can see the slider as we're working with it. So maybe 100. Okay, I'm just gonna do that for now so we can see the slider. So all I did, and I'll just recap because you couldn't really see it, for the lightbox link, I placed it within the slider. I gave it a higher Z index, set it to a position of absolute, and placed it in the bottom right. Before it was set to like relative, so it's at the top, but I want it to be absolute, so I can put it here at the bottom. Yeah, and then I'll give it a color overlay. So I'll select the color, select the green, and set the alpha to something like 60%. Okay, and I'll also add another image. I'll choose an image. I'll add the play icon, set it to cover, position it in the center, and actually I'll just set it to custom and give it a specific width and height of like maybe 35 by 35. And I don't need it to be tiled. And there we have that nice play button. All right. So far so good. We have the lightbox link there. So for this tutorial here, I'm using a YouTube link from I forget his name, but I'll find it in a second. So let me go here, and for the media, I'm going to say video and paste it right in there, and I'll say save. Let me publish just so I can get the guy's name, and I'll preview. So now when we click, wait a second here, am I in the right one? Animal, okay, preview. Yeah, so let's, okay, yeah, publish to select the domain, preview, okay, that's right, yeah. So I click, and it's by Kevin Richardson, the Lion Whisperer. He has a really cool YouTube channel about helping out lions, which I really like, and I think it fits kind of this theme of the animal conservation. Okay, so let's just recap. Let me go back in here, and let me select the content wrapper or the left wrapper and remove the 100 pixels so it goes back to normal. Okay, so I'll preview, and perfect. So we have the text, so I go through each one, into the jungle, one leopard at a time. Let's go ahead back into the heading wrapper, set the width to 500 pixels. Okay, we publish. And yeah, there we go, making the connection into the jungle, one leopard at a time. Okay, and it's all animated, looks good. I can click the play button, play the video. One thing you'll notice is that this is green, and that isn't a default thing in the lightbox. I actually added some custom code right in here where it's the style tags and then .w lightbox backdrop, the background, and then I set the background to that green with an opacity of 0.9. So we have a backdrop that matches the site. So we have the video and looks good. All right, so we're getting there. The last thing we're going to do is add some hover states to this button, this video, and the social media icons. So I'll select this button, go to states, go to hover, and I'll go to the color and I'll just adjust the brightness to maybe something like maybe 50%. Looks okay. Might be a bit dark, but we'll just go with that. Then for the lightbox link as well, we'll go to the hover state and we'll change the backdrop color, or the backdrop brightness to 50. So when we hover, we just get like a darker state. And then we also want to go to the social media icons. So again, I'm gonna set the wrapper back to 100. So I'll select the social media icon for the hover state, select hover, and change the color to the lime green. Okay, then I'll go back to states. I'll select the left wrapper and remove the width. So I'm just adjusting the width so we can see other elements in the designer. Okay, so now we have the darker hover state for the video and the button, and then the social media icons also turn green when you hover. If you want some easing to these hover states, you can just select the element with the hover state, make sure it's in the normal state, and go down to transitions, click the plus, and then you can do something like background color, and then change the duration. So I can do something like 350, and I can say something like ease out quad to match the easing of the entire site. So now when I preview, it subtly turns green rather than kind of an abrupt green. Okay, so I think we're just about done. The last thing I'm going to do is go into the slider, go into element settings, and then for the easing, I'm going to set it to ease out quad, just to match the easing of the entire site, and the duration of 500 milliseconds is okay. So the easing of the slide coming in matches the easing of the text coming in. Okay, so we have the button, we have the menu up here with the links, and we have the play button. Okay, there. So as you can see here in the preview of Webflow, it's black, and that's because the code doesn't go into effect until we publish it to a live site. So I'll go ahead and preview, and yeah, so now when I click, it's green. Very nice. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else I'd like to cover. Here we have the play buttons. That looks good. Or the slider, the left and right arrow. You can adjust the size of these arrows simply by going into Webflow, selecting the icon, and then changing the size here within the typography section. So I can say something like 32 to make them a bit smaller. All right, so I think we're nearing the end of this tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I love working with Webflow, so it's really fun for me to build things like this. And yeah, and just kind of working with different elements and things like that. So again, the images are from Envato Elements. The typography or the font is from Adobe Fonts. It's Proxima Nova. And yeah, so the last thing that I'll showcase is, I'm not going to showcase it in this video tutorial. There's going to be a follow-up where I create this animation here in After Effects, and then I use Body Movement and Lottie to place it into the site, and then I add a backdrop that appears and then goes up in Webflow. So we're pretty much done. We're done here with this tutorial. If you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. I do have a Slack channel as well where we can discuss more in depth these tutorials and the daily interactions that I post at webdevforyou.com. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. I think that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and review the layout here within the navigator. So let me make it a bit larger. So we started with the section, set it to grid. We have a left wrapper, the slider, and the right wrapper. And in the left wrapper, we have the menu wrapper up here. We set it to a height of 100. Then we have the text logo, the menu line, and the menu item links. Then we have the content wrapper, has a display setting of center, flex, or left and center. We have the two heading wrappers with an overflow of hidden, and then we have the headings inside of each heading wrapper. We have the subheading wrapper with an overflow of hidden, and then we have the subheadings in there. And then we have the paragraph wrapper with, it doesn't have any overflow, but we have the paragraphs in there. And then we have the button here, and I'll just rename this to button. Okay, then we have the slider. We have in the mask, we have slide 1, 2, and 3. They all have an interaction to affect the headings and the subheading in the paragraph. So we have a slide in and a slide out. They do have a delay for the slide in to 0.35 so that the slide out animation has time to complete. And then we adjusted the arrows within the slider. We placed it in the lower left, added a -100 margin to the left arrow. Okay, and then we have the right wrapper with, let me just call this here, green square, and then call this here vertical line. So we have the vertical line, the green square, the vertical line, the social media wrapper with the social media link blocks and the social media icons. Okay, and then you can link out those icons to anything you'd like. All right, so yeah, this is part 1 for the video. Part 2 will be the After Effects animation and then adding it to the site via Lottie. Cool. Yeah, thanks for watching. I know this is a fairly long video. I'm not going to do any editing, so like if I messed up in a few places, you're just gonna have to see where I messed up, but hopefully you get some insight into how I fixed things. For this, I'm not sure I would leave the slide heading to a width of 500 pixels. I might work with the padding so that I don't have to set a specific width for the heading. For the paragraph, I did set a specific width, but either way, this works for the desktop version. But usually I don't like setting kind of like a width there. I like the text to kind of set the width for the headings. But for the paragraph, I do want it a specific width, so I set it to a width of 400 pixels, and just so it doesn't go too far there. All right, so I think that's it. Let me preview one more time, and yeah, good to go. Cool. Yeah, if you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. All this content is free, so if you like any of the resources I mentioned below, I am an affiliate with all those resources. So with Learn UI Design, with Webflow, and with Envato Elements. So I am an affiliate with all those. So if you like these videos, those links do help support my creation process. I highly recommend Learn UI Design. A lot of these concepts, these design concepts that I used for this video are from that course, and just going through the course and doing all the assignments and homework. So yeah, have fun building in Webflow. I think it is the most powerful visual web development platform on the web, and I'm just super excited to be sharing this information and content. Obviously this is just a header, it's not a full website, but hopefully this gives you some insight into creating a full website. I do have templates at webdevforyou.com where you can see full page websites with different pages, but I like these headers just to practice design and practice development in Webflow. So yeah, thanks for watching. I think that's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. If you'd like to discuss this further, become a member of the WebDev for You Slack, and we can discuss there. Thanks everyone, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Thank you.